So right now, sitting totally parallel to the internet that you use every single day, there is a completely invisible, uh, uncensorable, and highly secure digital world.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think about.
Right. It's this network that's basically immune to surveillance, impervious to corporate tracking, and it's built entirely by its users. But, I mean, there's one glaring, unavoidable problem with this digital utopia.
It's empty.
It is almost completely empty.
Yeah, it's the ultimate paradox of digital privacy, really. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the infrastructure for a perfectly secure ecosystem, but because the walls are built so high to keep the watchers out.
Nobody inside has anything to look at.
Exactly. Nothing at all.
So welcome to this deep dive. Today we are opening up a stack of honestly super dense technical manuals, infrastructure action plans, and troubleshooting guides. And they're all focused on a process called anonymous I2P torrent bridging.
Which sound incredibly intimidating.
It really does. It sounds like hacker-level jargon. But our mission today is to completely demystify this. We want to break down the seemingly impenetrable topic so that you, listening right now, can understand the mechanics, set up the software, and, safely move files without ever exposing your digital identity.
And we're keeping it jargon-free. Or, well, as jargon-free as humanly possible when talking about encrypted networks.
Absolutely. So to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we are talking about here, let's build a mental model. I want you to imagine walking into the largest, most spectacular public library in human history. Millions of books, movies, software, literally everything is sitting right there on the shelves.
Right. And this represents the regular internet, what the technical community refers to as the Clearnet.
Clearnet.
Yeah, it's a marvel of human connection, obviously, but it comes with a pretty severe architectural flaw when it comes to user autonomy.
Because in this massive public library, there are no private reading rooms. None. Everywhere you walk, there is someone with a clipboard following, like right behind you.
Taking notes on everything.
Everything. They write down exactly which aisle you walked down, which book you pulled off the shelf, how long you kept it open, and who you were standing next to while you read it. Everyone can see who you are and what you're consuming.
Which, I mean, that is the stark reality of standard peer-to-peer file sharing on the Clearnet today. When you engage in normal torrenting, your IP address is fully exposed to every single other machine in that swarm.
Just out in the open.
Totally in the open. Your internet service provider, copyright enforcement agencies, or honestly simply malicious actors scanning the network, they can all directly tie your digital requests right back to your physical home address.
Yikes. Okay, so keep that monitored library in your head. Now imagine there is a secret door in the back of this massive library. You need a specialized key to open it, but once you step through, you are inside a completely private, ultra-secure club. The clipboards are gone.
The cameras are gone.
Right. Nobody knows your name, where you came from, or what you were doing. It is total, uncompromised privacy.
And this secret room, that's the I2P network. The Invisible Internet Project.
The Invisible Internet Project.
Yeah, it's a decentralized peer-to-peer anonymity network built on the principles of garlic routing.
Garlic routing, we'll get to that. But here is the tragedy of this setup. You walk into this beautiful, pristine, secret room expecting to find all the knowledge of the world protected from surveillance.
And the shelves are bare.
The shelves are completely bare. The secret library is a ghost town. Because it is so locked down, it completely lacks the millions of files and massive swarms of data that the public Clearnet has.
Yeah, I mean, the anonymity provides an incredible shield, but it also creates a really severe content gap.
Yeah.
A library is only as valuable as its archives, right?
Right.
So if you want a popular file or, a piece of open source software or a public domain documentary, you probably won't find it inside I2P natively. The network is starved of content.
Which brings us to a really fascinating scavenger tool mentioned throughout the infrastructure guides we reviewed. It's called Locanet.
Locanet, yeah.
So if I'm sitting in the empty secret library and I desperately need a specific file that is only available out in the monitored public library, Locanet seems to be the designated vehicle to go get it. How does that underlying mechanism actually function?
Well, Locanet operates as a specialized free VPN, essentially. But it's built on a completely different architecture than the commercial VPNs you might be familiar with. It utilizes an onion routing protocol to mask your physical location.
Okay, so layers of encryption, like an onion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you need that obscure file from the public Clearnet, You can't just reach out and grab it directly, or your IP address is instantly logged by those clipboards.
Mm.
Instead, Locanet encapsulates your internet traffic, encrypting it and bouncing it through a decentralized network of service nodes before it ever touches the public internet.
It's like putting on a hyper-realistic disguise, right? Like you walk back out into the public library, grab the book off the shelf, and retreat to the secret room before anyone can match your face to your library card.
That's a great way to look at it. Precisely. It allows you to safely dip into the public domain to acquire the data without tying that acquisition to your real-world identity. However,
There's a catch.
a big one. The documentation is incredibly specific about the limitations of this disguise. Locanet is highly effective for establishing a secure tunnel to download torrent files, but technical testing shows it fails miserably if you try to use it for general day-to-day web browsing.
Wait, really? Why does it break down for standard browsing? I mean, if it can handle a massive multi-gigabyte torrent download, shouldn't loading a simple web page be effortless?
You'd think so, but it comes down to how modern web infrastructure behaves compared to peer-to-peer protocols. Standard websites rely heavily on centralized DNS resolution and these complex multi-domain content delivery networks.
Okay.
So when a modern website sees traffic emerging from a Locanet exit node, it often flags it as highly suspicious, or just outright blocks it because the routing behavior doesn't match a standard consumer ISP.
Oh, because it looks like you're coming from somewhere weird.
Right. But peer-to-peer torrenting protocols, on the other hand, they are inherently resilient to weird routing paths.
Yeah.
They don't care about domain names. They just care about connecting to an IP address and requesting a block of data. So Locanet is a specialized scavenger tool, not a daily driver for, checking your email or watching YouTube.
Okay, that makes sense. So privacy doesn't have to mean sacrificing access to human knowledge. We have the monitored public library with all the books. We have the empty secret library where we can read in peace. And we have Locanet to safely scavenge.
Right.
But, and this is the crux of it, a network can't survive if every single person is just scavenging for themselves and hoarding it.
No, it starves.
Right. The whole point of the documentation we are analyzing today is figuring out how to permanently fill the shelves of the secret library so people don't have to keep risking the public one.
And the technical framework for solving this is known as network mixing, or more commonly, bridging. It is the act of establishing a presence on both the Clearnet and the I2P network simultaneously.
So we are basically acting as digital smugglers for a good cause. We stand with one foot in the public world, pulling the boxes in, and one foot in the private world, passing those boxes directly to the people inside the club.
Exactly. You're the bridge.
And I read the community analytics on this in the sources, and they have modeled out something called the 1% strategy. It claims that if just 1% of users bridge content this way, the entire ecosystem flips from a ghost town to a massive self-sustaining library.
Just 1%.
That sounds crazy to me. How does a number that small actually shift the architecture of an entire global network?
Well, it relies on the exponential math of the BitTorrent protocol. When you bridge a file, you aren't just uploading it once to a static server somewhere. You are introducing a cryptographic swarm to the private network.
A swarm.
Yeah. Let's say you bridge a 1 gigabyte file. You download it from the Clearnet and you begin seeding it into I2P. The moment a second person inside I2P downloads even, say, 10% of that file from you, they immediately become a source for that 10% to a third person.
Oh, wow. Right, so they become a librarian too, even before they finish reading the book themselves.
Exactly. The availability of the data just multiplies outward exponentially. If 1 out of 100 people acts as a consistent bridge, the piece availability inside the private network reaches a critical density.
So the network sustains itself.
Right. The I2P network no longer has to rely on the Clearnet for that specific file because there are enough internal nodes holding different fragments of the data to sustain the swarm indefinitely. You are essentially transforming a fragile, dependent network into a resilient standalone archive.
That's incredibly powerful. But standard torrent software is built entirely for the public library, right? It speaks the language of normal IP addresses. To be a smuggler, you need a vehicle that has like a compartment for the public network and a hidden compartment for the private network.
That's a good analogy. And the sources highlight 2 primary pieces of software capable of this: BiglyBT and BitTorrent.
Right, let's start with BiglyBT, because the documentation treats this almost like the holy grail for this specific task. Why is BiglyBT so special here?
BiglyBT is really unique because it is the only torrent client currently in existence that possesses native, built-in support for simultaneous Clearnet and I2P routing. The architecture of a client allows for a plugin called the I2P helper. Specifically, you need version 1.9.0.1.1 or higher, which seamlessly integrates the complex routing protocols required to talk to the invisible internet.
But why does Bigly BT have this capability out of the box while massive mainstream clients don't? Is it just a difference in coding language or what?
It is heavily influenced by its lineage. BiglyBT is written in Java, and it is a direct fork of the classic Azurius or Vuz client. You remember Vuz?
Oh, yeah, the little blue frog, absolutely.
Right. So the original foundational software for the I2P network router is also written entirely in Java. Because they share the same underlying environment, creating an application programming interface, or API, between the two programs is significantly more fluid. BiglyBT was practically designed to interface with Java-based anonymity networks.
Okay, that makes total sense. But what if I just don't want to use Bigly BT? Like, BitTorrent is arguably the most widely used client on the planet right now. People like what they know.
Sure, people love their setup.
The notes say BitTorrent can do this, but it requires manual tinkering, and it labels the I2P support as experimental. What are we actually tinkering with under the hood there?
Well, BitTorrent is built on a massive, highly optimized C++ software library called libtorrent. And for over a decade, libtorrent completely ignored I2P because the engineering overhead to support base32 encrypted addresses was just immense.
Oh, so it's just too hard to implement.
Basically, yeah. But starting around version 4.6.0 RC2, they finally introduced experimental mixed mode support. To make it work, though, you have to bypass the standard user interface, dive deep into the advanced network configurations, explicitly flag the experimental I2P toggles, and manually route the local ports yourself.
So there's no handy plugin holding your hand.
Exactly. It doesn't have a seamless plugin. You are directly editing the client's routing logic.
So Bigly BT comes from the factory with the smuggler compartments pre-installed, whereas taking BitTorrent means you are grabbing a blowtorch and welding the secret compartments into the trunk of your daily driver yourself.
That is exactly what it's like. Both will transport the goods, but one is going to take a lot more mechanical know-how.
Okay, let's get our hands dirty then. We know the mission, we have the vehicles. How do we actually deploy this infrastructure? Step one.
The deployment requires two completely distinct software engines running simultaneously on your computer. First, you have your torrent client, so either BiglyBT or BitTorrent. Second, you must install and run the actual I2P router.
And there are choices there too, right?
Yes, you have two choices here as well. The original Java implementation or a lightweight C++ rewrite known as I2PD.
Okay, so I install the torrent client, I install the ITBD router, I turn them both on. But from what I'm reading, they don't natively understand each other.
No, they don't?
My torrent client speaks the language of the public internet, and the I2P router speaks the language of encrypted garlic routing. If I just leave them running, they basically sit there in silence. How do I force them to communicate?
You have to establish a digital translator between the two applications. In the technical documentation, this translator is called a SAM bridge.
SAM bridge.
Yeah, SAM stands for Simple Anonymous Messaging.
Okay, I want to break down how this bridge actually works because the sources point out it's a critical failure point for new users. The instructions say you have to go into your current client and enter two specific values: host 127.0.0.1 and port 7656. Let's look at the mechanics of those numbers. Why 127.0.0.1?
So that specific sequence is the universal loopback address for the IPv4 protocol. In plain English, it translates to localhost.
Localhost.
Right. When you tell your torrent client to send data to 127.0.0.1, you're instructing it to route the traffic back into the exact same machine it originated from, rather than out into the physical network interface like your Wi-Fi card.
Oh, I get it. So you are telling the torrent software, don't look out on the open internet for the translator. The translator's sitting in the room with us right here on the hard drive.
Exactly. You're keeping it in-house.
And what about the port number? Why 7656?
Well, a port is simply a logical construct that identifies a specific process or service on a machine. Think of it as a designated doorway. Your computer has tens of thousands of these logical doors. Port 7656 is a standardized door that the SAM Bridge API sits behind, just waiting for instructions.
So you give it the address and the door number.
Yes. By inputting those two variables, you create a hardwired internal loop. The torrent client packages the file data, walks it over to door 7696 on the local machine, and hands it to the SAM bridge. The SAM bridge translates it into encrypted base 32 blocks and hands it to the I2P router, which then fires it out into the invisible network.
That is a brilliant piece of software engineering. The bridge is open, the data can flow. And this is a big but, I found a rule in the action plan that completely threw me off. It's the 30-minute biological rule.
Ah, yes. The warm-up.
It explicitly states, execute mandatory network warm-up. Start your I2P router and let it run for at least 30 minutes before initiating any torrent activity. I mean, if I plug a brand new router into my wall from my internet provider, I have a connection in 90 seconds. Why on earth does the secret network need half an hour to warm up?
It requires a massive paradigm shift in how you view networking. Your typical ISP router connects to a static, multi-billion-dollar centralized server farm that never moves and never changes its address.
Right, it just calls home.
Exactly. But I2P does not have a central server at all. It is a living, decentralized mesh network built dynamically from the computers of the users who are currently online at that exact moment. When you boot up your I2P router for the first time, it has a completely empty network database, or NetDB. It literally does not know how to find anyone else in the world.
So how does it build that database from scratch if there's no master directory?
It uses a process called bootstrapping. Your router connects to a few hard-coded seed nodes. These are long-standing, reliable routers maintained by the developers. But it doesn't use these nodes to download files. It uses them to ask for directions.
Just directions?
Right. It pings a seed node and says, who else is out there? The seed node replies with a list of cryptographic addresses for other peers. Your router then reaches out to those peers, introduces itself, and asks them for more addresses.
Okay, so it's like walking into a massive, chaotic cocktail party where you don't know a single person. You introduce yourself to the host. They introduce you to 3 people. Those 3 people introduce you to 10 more. And eventually you have a mental map of the entire room.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And building that map takes time because it has to be done securely. Your router isn't just collecting addresses. It is actively testing them. It builds what are called exploratory tunnels.
Exploratory tunnels.
Yeah. It sends tiny encrypted packets through complex multi-hop routes just to see if the nodes on the other end are fast, reliable, and actually passing the data along. If a node drops the packet or responds too slowly, your router discards it and looks for a better one.
So if I get impatient and try to force a massive torrent, download the absolute second I turn the software on before it has built that map or tested any tunnels,
The connection will collapse entirely.
it's completely crash.
Just completely crash. Oh, yeah. The router will try to force heavy data through untested fragile pathways. The packets will drop, and your torrent client will just report 0 seeders. The 30 minutes is the minimum biological time required for the software to seamlessly weave its own routes into the global mesh.
Okay, so I have let it mingle. I grab a coffee, the 30 minutes are up. How do I physically verify that my software has successfully rooted itself into the network? Because I don't want to just guess.
You don't have to guess. You access the internal web console for the I2P router, typically by pointing your browser to 127.0.1.7070. The dashboard provides real-time telemetry on your integration.
Nice.
And you are looking for one specific metric, the tunnel creation success rate. The documentation stresses that this number must reach 10% or higher.
Wait, 10%?
Yes.
That sounds like a catastrophic failure rate. I mean, if a commercial internet provider dropped 90% of my connection attempts, they would go out of business overnight. Why is 10% the benchmark for success here?
I know it sounds crazy, but you have to factor in the extreme volatility of a decentralized anonymity network. Every time your router tries to build a tunnel, it relies on random, volunteer machines scattered across the globe.
Right.
Some of those machines are running on old laptops, some are on unstable Wi-Fi connections, and some might just get turned off halfway through the tunnel creation process. Furthermore, the cryptographic overhead is massive. Building a multi-hop, garlic-routed circuit is mathematically intensive.
So a lot of failure is just baked into the design.
Inherently, yes. Therefore, a massive percentage of tunnel creation attempts will fail. If you are successfully establishing 10% of the tunnels you attempt, you've actually secured enough reliable pathways to achieve sustained high-speed data transfer.
Okay, so 10% is actually a victory.
A huge victory. Anything below that threshold, though, indicates your router is blocked by a firewall or your local network is restricting UDP traffic.
Well, speaking of firewalls, earlier we briefly touched on NAT traversal and hole punching from the sources. And it says I2P uses these techniques to get around firewalls without compromising security. But how does my computer physically punch a hole in a router's firewall without triggering a massive security alert?
It's really clever. It exploits the fundamental behavior of stateful firewalls. A standard home router is designed to block all incoming, uninvited traffic to protect your devices.
Right. Keep the bad guys out.
However, it implicitly trusts outgoing traffic.
Okay.
If you open a web browser and request a web page, your router makes a note. It creates a state saying, "My internal computer just asked for data from this external server. When the server replies, let the data through."
Okay, that makes sense. It expects an answer. But in a peer-to-peer network, people are trying to connect to me uninvited to grab files. How do they get past the block?
That is where the hole punching happens. Let's say a peer in the I2P network wants to connect to you, but your firewall is blocking incoming requests. The I2P network uses a third, mutual peer, someone you both can talk to as an introducer.
An introducer.
Yes, the peer tells the introducer, "I want to talk to him." The introducer sends a message to you saying, "Hey, this node wants to connect."
So the network sends a messenger through a tunnel I already opened.
Exactly. Then you send an outgoing packet directly to that new peer's IP address. Your firewall sees you initiating an outgoing connection and creates a rule to let the reply through.
Oh.
Simultaneously, the other peer sends an outgoing packet to you. Because you both essentially punched an outbound hole in your respective firewalls aimed at each other, the packets cross paths. The firewalls see the incoming data as a legitimate response to the outgoing request, and a direct, secure tunnel is established.
That is incredibly clever. It literally uses the firewall's own rules against it to build the network.
It's brilliant.
So, okay, we've deployed the software, we bridged the API, waited 30 minutes, and confirmed our 10% success rate. The infrastructure is solid. Step 1 is done. But if you stop here, you are going to run into the single biggest friction point for new users: agonizingly slow speeds. To actually be a functional librarian and pass books back and forth, you need to optimize the system. How do we configure this software to be fast without breaking the privacy we just worked so hard to establish? Step 2.
Right, step 2. The technical blueprint provides a very specific framework called the ultra-fast configuration. By default, anonymity networks prioritize absolute untraceability over bandwidth throughput.
Which makes sense.
Right. But if you want speed, you have to manually adjust the routing logic inside your torrent client's advanced settings, specifically the I2P tunnel parameters. The critical variables are the inbound and outbound hops, sometimes labeled as length, and the quantity of those tunnels. To optimize for file sharing, you must reduce both the hops and the quantity to 1.
Wait, hold on. I need to push back on this heavily.
I figured you might.
If a hop is an intermediate relay, basically bouncing my traffic off another computer to hide its origin, doesn't dropping the hop count to 1 fundamentally break the anonymity? I mean, if my data is only bouncing once, couldn't any sophisticated observer just monitor that single relay, watch the traffic go in, and watch it go out?
It's a valid concern.
If one hop is so much faster, why do the developers set the default to 2 or 3?
It is a critical question of threat perception, and to understand why one hop is actually safe for torrenting, we have to contrast I2P's architecture with Tor, the other major anonymity network.
Okay, Tor. I've heard of that.
In Tor, when you download a file, your traffic bounces through 3 nodes and then exits the network through an exit relay back onto the public internet. If you reduce Tor to 1 hop, the exit relay can easily see both you and the file you are downloading. Your privacy is totally shattered.
So you need multiple hops in Tor to separate the origin from the exit.
Exactly. But I2P is an internal darknet. The destination you are connecting to, the other person seeding the torrent file, is also inside the encrypted network. The traffic never exits to the public internet.
Oh.
Therefore, even with a one-hop tunnel, the person you are downloading from only sees the cryptographic address of your single-hop relay, not your real IP address. And your ISP only sees encrypted base32 packets going to a random computer, not what you are downloading.
Oh, okay. So I'm still wearing the disguise in the secret club. I'm just not walking around the block 5 times before I hand over the package to the other guy.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. For a whistleblower operating in a hostile regime who requires absolute paranoid levels of untraceability against state-level adversaries, sure, a 3-hop tunnel provides necessary cryptographic distance.
Right, life or death.
But for a user engaging in peer-to-peer file sharing, the threat model is vastly different. A one-hop internal tunnel provides robust privacy while radically minimizing the latency of the circuit. More hops equal exponentially more dropped packets, and slower speeds. Setting it to 1 is the documented sweet spot for functional bandwidth.
Okay, that clarifies the safety of the one-hop rule perfectly. But what about the bandwidth itself? If we are acting as a bridge, we need to supply power to the network. How much of our own internet pipeline should we be dedicating to the I2P router?
The Community Action Plan is very clear on this. You need to scale your network bandwidth to maximize your contribution to the swarm. Inside the I2PD configuration file, there are specific bandwidth limit parameters. You should set the limit to P, which allocates 2048 kilobytes per second, or if your hardware supports it, set it to X, which removes the bandwidth cap entirely.
So just open the floodgates.
Open them up. Furthermore, you must ensure your torrent client's share ratio is set to 100% or unlimited. A bridge is useless if it throttles the traffic trying to cross it.
Give as much as your personal internet connection can afford. Got it. But there is a massive hazard sign in the technical notes here, specifically regarding safety when using Locanet to scavenge.
Yeah, this is critical.
If I am using Locanet as my secure vehicle to dip into the public internet and grab obscure files to bring back, how do I guarantee I don't accidentally leak my real IP address while the download is happening?
This requires an understanding of how operating systems handle network routing interfaces. By default, your torrent client is set to use any interface. It looks at your computer and says, I see a Wi-Fi connection, I see an Ethernet cable, and I see a Locanet VPN tunnel. I'm going to use whatever path is currently fastest and most stable to get this file.
Which, I mean, sounds efficient. But if the Locanet tunnel drops for even a fraction of a second?
The operating system will instantly execute a failover.
Oh, no.
It will route the torrent traffic through your standard, unencrypted Wi-Fi connection just to keep the download alive. And the absolute millisecond that happens, your real physical IP address is broadcast to the entire public swarm.
Your disguise falls off right in the middle of the public library.
Exactly. Everyone sees you.
That is terrifying. How do we bolt the disguise to our face so it can't fall off?
You must perform a network interface bind. You dive into the advanced settings of BitTorrent, locate the network interface dropdown, and manually change it from any interface to specifically Locatune.
Locatune, what does that actually mean at the system level?
It is the virtual network adapter created by the Locanet software. By binding the torrent client to Locatuno, you are issuing a strict overriding mandate to the software protocol. You're saying, you are only authorized to communicate through this specific virtual adapter. If the Locanet tunnel drops or loses connectivity, you must instantly sever all connections and halt the download. You are forbidden from failing over to the Wi-Fi or Ethernet hardware.
It's a hard kill switch.
It is a hard kill switch that guarantees zero IP leakage.
Bind the interface to Locatune there. That is a non-negotiable step for scavenging. Okay, so we've survived the deployment, we waited the 30 minutes, we set the hops to 1 for speed, and we bound the interface for safety. We are in the secret club, and we are holding the obscure book we just smuggled in.
We're ready to share.
But as we analyze the final core requirement, step 3, we hit a wall where the documentation states 99% of new users fail. You have the file in the secret library, but absolutely nobody knows you have it. The visibility requirement.
This is the most pervasive and destructive misconception in the entire anonymity ecosystem. It completely neutralizes the 1% strategy if users don't grasp the mechanics of network discovery.
Let's unpack the safe passage illusion. If I'm using BiglyBT, there's a very simple, inviting little checkbox in the torrent properties that just says I2P. A new user naturally assumes, great, I checked the box, and the software automatically shares this file with everyone in the anonymous network.
It's a logical assumption.
Right, but you're telling me that is a total illusion. Why?
Because checking that box only dictates the internal routing behavior of your specific traffic. It tells the software, allocate an encrypted I2P tunnel for this torrent. It builds a secure road, but it does absolutely nothing to broadcast your existence.
Wait, so I could be sitting in the secret room, dedicating my bandwidth, keeping my computer on all night, holding the rarest file on the network with my secure tunnel open.
And you are completely invisible to everyone else.
I am a ghost.
You are a ghost. You have the file, you are connected to the network, but because no one knows to ask you for it, no one can download a single byte from you.
Yeah.
You are failing as a digital smuggler because you aren't actually passing the boxes to the community. You're just hoarding them in the dark.
That is a heartbreaking realization for someone trying to help. All that set up just to be a ghost. How do we take off the invisibility cloak? How do we announce to the secret club that we brought the goods?
The architecture of the solution relies on a central community hub called the Postman Tracker.
The Postman Tracker. In our notes, we compared this to a bulletin board.
It is exactly like a physical bulletin board. In the early primitive days of the internet, before algorithmic search engines indexed everything, if you wanted to find a file, you had to log into a central directory or a bulletin board system where people posted lists of what they had.
Right, like old school forums.
Exactly. The Postman Tracker serves that exact function for the I2P network. If you want the anonymous community to know you possess a file, you have to physically pin a digital flyer to that specific corkboard.
Hey everyone, I'm sitting over here in this encrypted tunnel, and I have the full archive of this open source software if anyone needs it.
Precisely. And the documentation outlines a very rigid manual workflow to accomplish this. It requires significant user intervention, which is precisely why so many beginners miss it. We need to break down the manual export process step by step.
Let's do it. Walk me through the mechanics of pinning the flyer to the board.
Step 1 is crucial. You have successfully scavenged the file from the public Clearnet using your torrent client. The absolute first thing you must do is stop the active torrent. Halt the seeding process entirely.
Why do I have to stop it?
Because you cannot edit the internal metadata of a torrent file while the software is actively reading it and using it to maintain swarm connections. It is locked by the operating system.
Okay, that makes sense.
Once it is stopped, you move to step 2. You open the properties of that specific torrent and navigate to the Trackles tab. This tab lists all the public Clearnet servers the software used to find the file initially. You must delete every single public tracker URL listed there.
I'm erasing the map to the public library.
Exactly. Then you manually paste in the specific encrypted base32 address for the Postman Tracker. The documentation provides the exact announce URL, which is http://tracker2.postman.i2 pronounce.php.
What does changing that URL actually do to the file?
A torrent file is essentially a bin-coded dictionary. It contains the cryptographic hashes of all the pieces of the file, and it contains an announce URL, which tells the software who to call to find other peers. By replacing the URL, you are rewriting the core instructions of the file, telling it to only seek peers through the encrypted Postman directory.
Wow!
Step 3. Now that the new instructions are baked in, you right-click the torrent and select the option to export it. This saves a brand new physical.torrent file to your desktop.
Okay, so now I have a newly minted instruction manual sitting on my hard drive. How does it get to the bulletin board?
Step 4 requires you to leave the torrent client completely. You open your I2P configured web browser, navigate to the Postman Tracker's internal website, log into your registered community account, and manually upload that .torrent file directly into their database.
I am literally uploading the flyer to the website myself.
Yep.
In 2026. This feels incredibly archaic. I mean, why on earth hasn't this process been automated? In normal torrenting, I never have to upload anything to a bulletin board. The software just automatically whispers to other computers and finds people. Why do I have to do all this manual labor for I2P?
It exposes a massive architectural limitation in how standard torrent clients handle peer discovery, specifically regarding the libtorrent framework that powers Torrent. The whispering you are referring to relies on a protocol called DHT, the distributed hash table.
Right, DHT. It's like a massive game of telephone. My computer asks the 10 computers closest to it, who has this file? They ask 10 more, and within seconds, the request propagates across millions of machines until someone answers.
Exactly. But here is the technical roadblock.
No.
The mainline DHT protocol used by the Clearnet is built mathematically around 160-bit node IDs that map directly to standard 32-bit IPv4 addresses.
Okay.
The entire structure of the hash table is predicated on the geometry of the public internet. I2P base32 addresses are fundamentally different. They are incredibly long, heavily encrypted cryptographic strings that simply do not fit into the standard DHT framework.
So the software physically cannot use the Whisper network inside the secret club because it doesn't know how to pronounce the names of the people inside.
That is a perfect analogy. The software library lacks the architectural support for I2P-specific automatic peer discovery. Because it cannot whisper to find peers dynamically, it must rely on a hard-coded central directory to match connections.
The Postman Tracker.
Yes. That is why the manual upload to the Postman Tracker is an absolute non-negotiable requirement. If you do not list your file in that central database, the automated systems cannot bridge the gap.
That is a staggering technical insight. The anonymity creates a format that breaks the standard discovery tools, forcing us to go back to bulletin boards.
It's the price of privacy.
Okay, we have covered the 3 massive pillars of bridging. We deployed the infrastructure and warmed it up. We optimized the routing hops to 1 for speed and bound our Locknet interface for safety. And we solved the visibility crisis by manually exporting and uploading our files to the Postman tracker.
We did.
But the deep dive isn't over. As we examine the troubleshooting logs in these sources, they warn of several advanced pitfalls that can still derail the entire operation.
Yeah, you really have to watch out for these.
Let's start with a quirk specific to the Bigly BT interface, the restart rule.
Oh, this one. This is a classic example of software state management that causes hours of profound frustration for new users. When you are configuring the internal settings of the Bigly BT I2P helper plugin, adjusting bandwidth, toggling proxy settings, changing tunnel lengths, you will notice a very small asterisk next to certain parameters.
And what is the mechanical significance of that asterisk?
It indicates that the variable you are changing requires a fundamental reinitialization of the software's network socket layer. When you hit Apply, the software saves the text value in a configuration file, but it does not inject that new behavior into the actively running code.
So it's saved, but not running.
Right. Users will change their routing logic, stare at the screen, and wonder why their speeds haven't improved. The software is still operating on the old rules because the new parameters cannot be loaded dynamically. If you change a setting with an asterisk, you must shut down the entire client and completely restart it to force the engine to read the new configuration.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Literally, yes.
The oldest law in the IT handbook still governs the most advanced anonymity networks.
That's amazing. Okay, let's move to the second major pitfall, magnet links.
Magnet links.
On the Clearnet, magnet links are magic. You click a string of text and the download instantly begins. But the technical guide explicitly warns that relying on standard magnet links for obscure files directly inside the I2P network is practically guaranteed to fail. Why does the magic break down?
We have to look at what a magnet link actually is. It does not contain any file data, and it doesn't even contain the .torn instruction manual. It is simply a URN, a uniform resource name, that carries a cryptographic fingerprint called an info hash.
It's just a heavily encrypted serial number for the file.
Correct. When you click a magnet link on the public internet, your torrent client takes that serial number, uses the massive DHT whisper network we just discussed, and shouts the number to millions of peers until someone shouts back, "I recognize that serial number. Here is the full instruction manual."
But inside the I2P network, the room is exponentially smaller. Exactly. The peer density is incredibly low. If you shout that serial number into the I2P network, there is a massive probability that nobody currently online has the metadata to match it. Because there is no central server holding the metadata, the magnet link simply hangs at 0% indefinitely.
Wow.
It fails because the network lacks the population required to resolve the hash dynamically.
So if the magnet link is a dead end inside I2P, how do we acquire the instruction manual for the file? What is the workaround here?
The developers built a native bridging tool specifically for this crisis called I2P Snark. It is a specialized, lightweight torrent client built directly into the I2P router software.
Okay, how does it work?
The workflow is highly specific. You take the Clearnet magnet link and paste it into I2P Snark. Because I2P Snark has access to network bridging, you allow it to use the public network just long enough to resolve the metadata to find the instruction manual. And when it downloads the .torrent file details, you stop the process entirely.
Oh, I use the public library to decode the serial number, but I don't download the actual book there.
All right. Then you open the settings of that file inside I2P Snark, and just like before, you inject the Postman tracker URL as the primary source. Finally, you navigate to the hidden application data folder on your operating system, usually located in App Data Local I2P Snark Last, where the software has saved the newly generated physical .torrent file.
And then you take that file and upload it to the Postman website.
Yes.
You are systematically converting a fragile, unresolvable magnet link into a robust, bridgeable file that the anonymous network can actually process. That is a brilliant piece of technical scavenging.
It's the only reliable method for porting obscure metadata across the network divide.
Incredible. All right, let's look at the final critical warning in the troubleshooting section. It revolves around the administrative dashboard, the web console security.
This one is vital. Earlier, we established that to monitor your tunnel success rate and network integration, you access the internal web console at 127.integer.1.7070.
On the local host.
Because it is on localhost, it is relatively secure. However, power users frequently attempt to alter the configuration files to expose that dashboard to their local area network, perhaps so they can monitor their router from their smartphone while sitting on the couch.
which sounds incredibly convenient. I mean, why does the manual forbid it?
Because of how the authentication layer is programmed. The web console relies on basic HTTP authentication protocols. The technical documentation emphatically states, HTTP authentication is not an encryption layer.
Meaning?
It transmits your administrative username and password in plain text across the network. If you expose that interface on a shared Wi-Fi network, any rudimentary packet-sniffing software can intercept your credentials instantly.
And if someone intercepts those credentials, they have total control over your I2P router.
Yes. They can unmask your tunnels, alter your routing tables, and completely compromise your anonymity.
The convenience of remote monitoring is vastly outweighed by the catastrophic security vulnerability it introduces.
Exactly. The console must remain strictly isolated to the local machine interface.
Keep the dashboard locked in the basement. Do not broadcast it to the coffee shop Wi-Fi.
Ever.
Man. We have covered an immense amount of highly technical ground today. We have dissected the mechanics, the routing mathematics, and the overarching philosophy of network mixing. Before we wrap up, let's distill this entire architectural blueprint into a clean, actionable recap so the sequence is crystal clear for everyone.
That's a good idea. It begins with understanding the disparity between the heavily monitored Clearnet and the secure but empty I2P network. Our objective is to bridge that gap by acting as digital conduits, bringing public data into the private sphere through the mechanics of mixed-mode seeding.
And to execute that objective, we laid out 3 uncompromising pillars. First, infrastructure deployment. You install BiglyBT or BitTorrent, you install your I2P router, and you force them to communicate by aiming the SAMBridge API to localhost 127.0.0.1 on port 7656.
And crucially, you do not force connection immediately. You obey the 30-minute rule, allowing the router to organically bootstrap its network database until you verify a 10% tunnel creation success rate.
Right. Second, optimization. You navigate into the advanced routing parameters and aggressively reduce both your tunnel hops and your quantity to 1.
Because the destination remains entirely within the encrypted network, this single-hop architecture preserves your anonymity while drastically reducing latency, unlocking ultra-fast swarm speeds. Concurrently, if you utilize Locanet for external file acquisition, you must implement a hard kill switch by binding your torrent client specifically to the Locatune 0 network interface, mathematically guaranteeing your physical IP address can never leak during a failover.
And third, and most importantly, the visibility requirement. You must overcome the safe passage illusion. A secure tunnel is useless if nobody knows what you are holding.
Because the software cannot utilize standard DHT whisper networks over base32 architecture, you must manually stop your Clearnet torrent, edit the trackers to include the Postman announce URL, export the physical file, and manually upload it to the central Postman tracker bulletin board.
Mastering those 3 pillars elevates a user from a confused beginner to a highly critical foundational node of the Invisible Internet project.
You really become part of the backbone.
And I want to emphasize the profound impact of what you, the listener, are actually doing when you follow these steps. It is incredibly easy to feel overwhelmed and entirely helpless when we discuss the staggering scale of global mass surveillance, corporate data harvesting, and internet censorship. We often feel like passive consumers trapped in the public library forced to accept the clipboards.
It's a very common feeling.
But by configuring this software, by dedicating a tiny fraction of your bandwidth to this bridging process, you are no longer passive. You are actively, tangibly constructing the architecture of a censorship-resistant, private digital archive for the entire world. By becoming part of that 1% strategy, you aren't just downloading files, you are literally building the infrastructure of a free internet, block by encrypted block.
It is a remarkable testament to how decentralized, volunteer-driven cryptography can solve structural vulnerabilities that multi-billion-dollar corporations refuse to address.
It is empowering on a fundamental level. But as we close the doors to the secret library today, there is a lingering thought from our research notes that completely reframes this entire endeavor. It's a philosophical paradox embedded right in the code.
Yeah, this part really stuck with me. We've spent this entire deep dive detailing the complex mechanics of how the private I2P network currently relies almost exclusively on bridging content from the public Clearnet just to survive, just to populate its empty shell.
Right.
But if we project this reliance into the future, it forces a critical evaluation of the network's true autonomy. If a perfectly anonymous, flawlessly encrypted digital ecosystem requires the monitored, surveilled public internet to supply every piece of its culture, its media, and its knowledge.
Is it truly an independent network? Or is it simply a highly secure shadow, doomed to only ever reflect the data that the Clearnet permits to exist?
Right.
If the secret library is entirely dependent on books smuggled from the public library, does it possess the capacity to ever write its own history? That is a haunting structural question to leave you with. Thank you for diving into the invisible architecture with us today. Keep your network interfaces bound, keep your hops optimized, and we will see you on the next deep dive.